Right now, as you're watching this, your phone is stealing your soul. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being literal. Every notification, every buzz, every red dot is rewiring your brain to crave distraction over depth, to choose reaction over creation, to live in a state of mental chaos that would have been considered a psychological disorder just 50 years ago. And here's what nobody wants to tell you. It's not an accident. You are being systematically trained to be weak, trained to be scattered, trained to hand over the most valuable thing you possess, your attention, to companies that sell it to the highest bidder while you get nothing in return but anxiety, comparison, and a growing sense that something is fundamentally wrong with your life. But it gets worse. Most people don't even realize they're being manipulated. They think this constant ping of notifications is normal. They think having 17 different apps demanding their attention is just modern life. They think the inability to sit alone with their thoughts for more than 60 seconds is just how things are now. They're wrong, dead wrong. And if you don't understand what's happening to your mind right now, in this moment, you're going to wake up in 10 years wondering where your life went. The world is louder than ever, and it's not getting quieter every second. Something pulls at you, a notification that promises importance but delivers emptiness. A headline designed to trigger your deepest fears or highest hopes. A voice cutting through the air, demanding your immediate attention. A demand that feels urgent, but serves no purpose in your actual life. Noise. Constant, relentless, suffocating noise that is literally rewiring your neural pathways to make you addicted to distraction. It doesn't matter where you are, in the city, surrounded by the mechanical symphony of traffic and construction and human chaos, in the forest, where even the birds seem to compete with the buzzing of your phone in your pocket, in your own room, your supposed sanctuary, where the walls themselves seem to vibrate with the frequency of a world that never sleeps. It finds you. The noise always finds you, not because it's stronger than you, not because it has some supernatural power over your consciousness, but because you haven't trained yourself to be silent. You haven't built the mental muscles necessary to create and maintain inner stillness. You've never learned the discipline of selective listening, of conscious filtering, of deliberate deafness to what doesn't serve your highest purpose. You live in a battlefield of sound, but most people don't even realize they're at war. They think this is normal. They think this constant stimulation, this perpetual state of partial attention, this fragmented consciousness scattered across 1,000 different inputs is just how life is supposed to be. But the war is not fought with swords or guns or any physical weapon you can see or touch. It's fought with attention. Your attention, the most valuable resource you possess, more precious than time itself, because time without attention is just existence without meaning, and you are bleeding focus by the hour. Every notification you respond to, every meaningless conversation you engage in, every moment you spend consuming instead of creating, you're hemorrhaging the very essence of what makes you capable of achieving anything meaningful. You're trading your power for the illusion of connection, your potential for the comfort of distraction, your future for the temporary relief of not having to face your own thoughts. Noise isn't just what you hear with your ears. That's the amateur's understanding of noise. The real noise, the noise that kills dreams and destroys potential, is what steals your mind, what clutters your thoughts like debris after a storm, what keeps you distracted when you should be building something that matters, when you should be training your body and mind for the challenges ahead, when you should be moving forward with purpose and precision instead of sideways with confusion and doubt. Noise wears many faces, and it's a master of disguise. It appears as comparison, that poison that makes you measure your behind the scenes against everyone else's highlight reel. It masquerades as connection when you're scrolling through the manufactured lives of people you barely know, absorbing their curated moments and mistaking voyeurism for relationship. It whispers as doubt, that voice that questions every decision, every move, every moment of confidence you dare to feel. It roars as anger at things you can't control, political situations and social dynamics and other people's choices that have absolutely no bearing on your personal mission, but somehow consume hours of your mental energy every single day. Noise is anything that takes your power and trades it for comfort, outrage, or distraction. It's the algorithm that learns your weaknesses, and feeds them back to you disguised as entertainment. It's the conversation that goes nowhere, but feels easier than the work you know you should be doing. It's the worry about things that might happen instead of the action on things that need to happen. It's the mental energy you spend on other people's opinions instead of on your own vision. The most insidious thing about noise is that it doesn't scream. If it screamed, you might recognize it as the enemy. Instead, it whispers. It's subtle, it's reasonable. It says, "This can't wait." It says, "This is important." It says, "This is urgent." It presents itself as legitimate demand on your time and attention. But when you look closely, when you examine these whispered demands with the eyes of someone who values their own consciousness, you realize that almost none of it is actually important. Almost none of it is actually urgent. Almost none of it deserves the precious resource of your focused attention. The modern world has confused urgent with important, loud with meaningful, busy with productive. You've been trained to respond to urgency regardless of importance, to pay attention to volume regardless of value, to stay busy regardless of whether that busyness moves you toward your goals or away from them. This is not an accident. This is by design. There are forces in the world that benefit from your scattered attention, your fragmented focus, your inability to think deeply about what really matters to your life. But you don't have to accept this. You don't have to live as a victim of noise. You have a choice, and that choice starts with understanding what stillness really means. Stillness is not laziness. This is the first lie you need to reject. The world has taught you to equate stillness with inaction, silence with emptiness, quiet with weakness. But this is propaganda designed to keep you in motion without direction, active without purpose, busy without meaning. Stillness is power restrained. It's the calm before the strike, the silence that precedes precision, the gathered energy that comes before explosive action. Think of the greatest predators in nature. They don't chase their prey in a panic. They wait, they watch, they calculate. They move with deadly efficiency because they understand that stillness is not the absence of power, but the concentration of it. It's the archer drawing back the bow, gathering all the energy into a single point before release. It's the martial artist who appears relaxed, but is coiled like a spring, ready to explode into action with perfect timing. It's the surgeon who takes a moment of absolute stillness before making the critical incision. It's the entrepreneur who sits in silence, thinking through all the variables before making the decision that will change everything. The world has trained you to fear stillness, because stillness is where truth lives. In stillness, you can't hide behind the noise. You can't distract yourself from the hard questions. You can't avoid the work you know you need to do. You can't pretend that your current trajectory is taking you where you actually want to go. And the powers that profit from your distraction, that benefit from your scattered attention, that need you to keep consuming instead of creating, they don't want you to find that stillness. So they've convinced you to fill every pause, to never be alone with your thoughts, to always have something playing in your ears, something moving on a screen, something demanding your attention. They've made silence feel uncomfortable, made solitude feel lonely, made stillness feel like failure. They want you to keep consuming until your own voice disappears beneath the noise, until you no longer know what you actually think, because you're too busy processing what everyone else thinks. But the warrior walks the other path. He understands that in a world drowning in noise, the person who can find and maintain stillness has an almost supernatural advantage. While everyone else is reacting, he's thinking. While everyone else is scattered, he's focused. While everyone else is being pulled in 1,000 directions, he's moving with singular purpose toward his chosen destination. He carves silence out of chaos like a sculptor carves beauty from stone. He finds stillness where others find boredom, because he understands that boredom is just the mind-demanding entertainment, and entertainment is just another form of noise. He listens, not to reply but to understand, not to win arguments, but to gather information, not to prove his intelligence, but to actually become more intelligent. This requires a complete shift in how you relate to your own mind. Your mind plays its own music, and most of the time, you're not the conductor. Sometimes the music is clear, harmonious, productive. Sometimes it's violent, chaotic, destructive. Sometimes it's pure noise, random thoughts colliding with each other like cars in a fog. but you have more control over this internal soundtrack than you realize. You don't silence the noise by escaping. Running away from noise just means it follows you wherever you go. Because the loudest noise is often the noise in your own head. You silence it by facing it, by turning off the outside world long enough to hear what's actually playing inside, by sitting with your own thoughts without judgment, without trying to fix them or change them or make them prettier than they are. This is terrifying for most people because most of what we fear is buried under noise. We stay busy, stay distracted, stay engaged with external stimulation because we intuitively know that silence will reveal things we don't want to see, and silence does reveal truth. That's exactly why it terrifies people, because in silence, you can no longer pretend. You can no longer maintain the comfortable lies you tell yourself about your habits, your progress, your actual priorities as revealed by how you spend your time and attention. You're forced to confront what you've avoided, the fear that's been driving more of your decisions than you want to admit, the laziness that masquerades as being busy with unimportant things, the lies you tell yourself about why you haven't made the changes you know you need to make, why you haven't started the projects you know you need to start, why you haven't had the conversations you know you need to have. And only by facing these things, by sitting with them in the uncomfortable silence where they can't hide behind distraction, can you kill them? Not by fighting them directly, which just gives them more energy, but by exposing them to the light of conscious awareness until they dissolve like shadows at sunrise. But this process requires that you stop living reactively and start living deliberately. The world wants a reaction from you, a quick one that shows you're paying attention, a loud one that proves you care about the right things, a thoughtless one that keeps you engaged with their agenda instead of focused on your own. Every algorithm, every social media platform, every news organization, every advertiser is designed to reward your worst habits, to keep you in motion without direction, to make you feel busy and informed and connected while actually keeping you scattered and ignorant and isolated from your own purpose. But a warrior doesn't react. He builds rituals. He builds systems. He creates structured responses to predictable stimuli instead of letting every external input hijack his attention and energy. He wakes before the world because he understands that the first thoughts of the day set the tone for everything that follows. He trains when no one's watching because he knows that the strength you build in private is what serves you in public. He creates while others consume because he understands that creation builds character while consumption just kills time. He fasts from distraction like it's poison because that's exactly what it is. Poison for the mind. You don't just avoid poison when you happen to think about it. You build defenses against it. You create systems that make it harder for poison to enter your system. You develop habits that strengthen your resistance to toxic influences. And that's what noise is. It's mental poison. It corrupts your ability to think clearly, to see reality accurately, to make decisions based on your actual values instead of your conditioned responses. It weakens your willpower by constantly demanding micro-decisions about where to place your attention. It fragments your consciousness by training you to switch between different inputs every few seconds. It makes you reactive instead of proactive, scattered instead of focused, weak instead of strong. The antidote is not just the absence of noise, but the presence of intentional silence. And this requires that you completely rethink how you use time. You don't need more time. You already have exactly the same 24 hours that every successful person in history has had. You need more silence. You need more uninterrupted blocks of time where you can think deeply about what actually matters. Instead of reacting quickly to what feels urgent, you've given your best hours to noise, to scrolling through feeds that leave you less informed than when you started, to explaining yourself to people who weren't asking for an explanation, to proving your worth to people whose opinion has no bearing on your actual success, to reacting to situations you can't control instead of acting on situations you can control. And what's left for your vision, for your craft, for the hard, quiet work that actually moves you forward? Nothing. Scraps, the tired remnants of mental energy after you've spent your prime consciousness on things that don't matter. This is insane. This is like eating dessert first and wondering why you're not hungry for the nutritious meal. This is like spending your money on lottery tickets and wondering why you can't afford the things you actually need. This is like giving your emotional energy to strangers on the internet and wondering why you don't have patience for the people you love. You must reclaim the sacred hours, the first hours of your day, when your mind is clear and your willpower is strong. Guard them like gold. Don't check your phone. Don't read the news. Don't engage with anyone else's agenda until you've spent time on your own. The last hours before sleep, when your subconscious is preparing to process the day's experiences, clean them of garbage. Don't fill your mind with violent images or angry voices or other people's problems. Give your subconscious something valuable to work with while you sleep. In between, throughout the day, cut what is not essential. Be ruthless about this. Every yes to something unimportant is a no to something important. Every moment you spend on noise is a moment you don't spend on signal. Every ounce of attention you give to distraction is an ounce you don't give to your mission. Because distraction doesn't just steal time. Time can be recovered. If you waste an hour, you can make better use of the next hour. But distraction kills your potential. It kills it slowly, quietly, without resistance. It's death by 1,000 small compromises, 1,000 tiny decisions to engage with what's easy instead of what's important. And the killing is so gradual that you don't notice it happening until one day. Maybe years from now, you look up and realize you never really heard your own thoughts, only echoes of a world that never cared about your future. You realize you spent your life responding to other people's priorities instead of discovering and pursuing your own. You realize you know more about strangers' opinions than about your own values. You realize you can recite the details of celebrity drama, but can't articulate your own vision. For the next 5 years, you realize you've been living someone else's life, guided by someone else's algorithm, serving someone else's agenda. This is the ultimate tragedy of noise. It doesn't just make you less productive. It makes you less yourself. It drowns out the quiet voice of your own wisdom, your own intuition, your own dreams. It replaces your authentic thoughts with borrowed thoughts, your original ideas with recycled ideas, your unique perspective with crowd-approved perspectives. But there is another way. Noise thrives in crowds, but clarity is born in solitude. Not loneliness, which is the painful feeling of being disconnected from others. Solitude, which is the powerful choice to be alone with your own discipline, with your own mission, with your own voice. Solitude is where you remember who you are when nobody's watching, what you want when nobody's influencing, what you believe when nobody's pressuring. If you cannot sit alone in a room for an hour without reaching for a screen, without needing external stimulation, without feeling the compulsive urge to connect with someone else's consciousness instead of your own, you are not free. You are addicted. You are dependent. You are a slave to systems designed to capture and monetize your attention. And like any addict, the first step to recovery is admitting you have a problem. The strongest men I know, the most successful people I've encountered, the individuals who seem to operate from a different level of clarity and purpose, they all have one thing in common. They spend more time in silence than in talk, more time in thought than in reaction, more time building than scrolling, more time planning than responding, more time creating than consuming. They understand something that the distracted masses have forgotten. The quieter the mind, the sharper the blade. The less noise you allow into your consciousness, the more clearly you can see what actually matters. The more time you spend in deliberate silence, the more powerful your words become when you do choose to speak. The more you resist the pull of constant stimulation, the more intensely you can focus when focus is required. This is not a lifestyle choice. This is a strategic advantage. In a world where everyone is scattered, the person who can concentrate has enormous power. In a world where everyone is reacting, the person who can think has enormous influence. In a world where everyone is consuming, the person who can create has enormous value. But developing this advantage requires that you understand there is no balance between silence and noise. This is not a negotiation where you can have a little of both and everything works out fine. This is war, and in war, one side wins and the other side loses. Either you silence the noise, or you become its slave. Either you control your attention, or your attention is controlled by others. Either you decide what gets into your mind, or others decide for you. If you become the slave of noise, you become a puppet of algorithms designed by people who understand your psychology better than you do. You become a reactor instead of an actor, a scroller instead of a creator, a consumer instead of a producer. You become a ghost with no center, no core identity that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. No mission that guides your decisions when everything around you is chaos. No edge, no competitive advantage, no unique value that sets you apart from the distracted masses. That is death by 1,000 distractions. And it's happening to millions of people in real time. You can watch it happening. You can see people losing their ability to think deeply, to concentrate for extended periods, to sit comfortably with their own thoughts. You can see them becoming more reactive, more emotional, more dependent on external validation. You can see their attention spans shrinking, their ability to delay gratification weakening, their tolerance for boredom disappearing. Don't join them. Discipline is not just about what you do, it's about what you don't do. It's not just about action, it's about deletion. Removing what weakens you so that you can focus completely on what strengthens you. Protecting what sharpens you by eliminating what dulls you. Creating boundaries around your consciousness like you would create boundaries around your property. This means you need to become comfortable with being different, with being the person who doesn't immediately respond to every message, who doesn't know about every trending topic, who doesn't have an opinion about every controversy, who doesn't participate in every conversation, who doesn't consume every piece of content that everyone else is consuming. You need to become comfortable with missing out on things that don't matter so that you can fully engage with things that do matter. You need to accept that some people will think you're antisocial when you're actually being prosocial in the deepest sense, protecting your ability to show up fully for the relationships and responsibilities that truly deserve your attention. You need to embrace the reality that in a world addicted to stimulation, the person who can sit still looks abnormal. In a world addicted to reaction, the person who thinks before responding looks slow. In a world addicted to consumption, the person who creates looks weird. But abnormal, slow, and weird are exactly what you want to be if normal, fast, and typical lead to a scattered mind and a wasted life. Be the one who moves without announcement, because announcement is often just another form of noise. Seeking attention instead of delivering results. Who sharpens in silence, because the sharpening process requires concentration that noise destroys. Who plans in solitude, because real planning requires thinking through all the variables, considering all the consequences, imagining all the scenarios. And this kind of deep thinking is impossible in an environment full of interruptions. Who strikes with clarity, because clarity comes from the still mind that sees the situation as it actually is, not as it appears through the distorting lens of emotional reaction or social pressure or algorithmic manipulation. While others shout, trying to be heard above the noise, you observe, gathering information that they miss because they're too busy talking to listen. While they panic, spreading their emotional state to everyone around them, you breathe, maintaining the calm center that allows for effective action. While they crave attention, desperately seeking validation from others, you master the art of invisibility, doing your best work when nobody's watching, building your strength in private so you can deploy it in public when the moment is right. Because a quiet mind is an unstoppable mind, not because it's passive, but because it's selective. Not because it doesn't care, but because it cares about the right things. Not because it's weak, but because it conserves its strength for battles worth fighting. Not because it's empty, but because it's full of the right things. Clarity instead of confusion, purpose instead of distraction, wisdom instead of information, vision instead of reaction. You weren't made for noise. Every cell in your body, every neuron in your brain, every fiber of your being is designed for focus, for concentration, for sustained attention on what matters. But the modern world has hijacked these natural systems, exploiting them for profit, manipulating them for control, corrupting them for purposes that serve others instead of you. You were made for clarity, for the kind of crystal clear thinking that cuts through confusion like a sword through silk, for the kind of unwavering focus that allows you to see solutions where others see only problems, for the kind of deep understanding that comes from sustained contemplation. rather than shallow consumption. This is your birthright, but it's also your responsibility. Nobody else can reclaim it for you. Nobody else can do the hard work of building the habits, creating the systems, making the daily choices that protect your consciousness from the chaos around you. Nobody else can sit in the uncomfortable silence where growth happens, face the difficult truths that emerge when the noise stops, or do the patient work of developing a mind that serves your highest purpose instead of someone else's agenda. The choice is binary and immediate. Silence the noise or be consumed by it. There is no middle ground, no compromise position, no way to split the difference. Every moment you delay is a moment the noise gains strength. Every day you postpone the work of reclaiming your attention is a day you lose ground in the battle for your own consciousness. But understand this, the moment you choose silence, the moment you commit to protecting your mind from the toxic influences that surround you, the moment you decide to build your life around clarity instead of confusion, you join a different category of human being. You become someone who thinks instead of reacts, who creates instead of consumes, who acts from purpose instead of impulse. You become dangerous to the systems that profit from distraction because you're no longer controllable through manipulation of your attention. You become valuable to the people who matter because you can offer them the gift of your full presence instead of your scattered awareness. You become powerful in ways that people living in noise can't even comprehend because your power comes from within instead of from external validation or stimulation. This is not a philosophical discussion. This is a practical matter of survival in an information-rich, wisdom-poor world. The people who learn to silence the noise will thrive. The people who don't will struggle not because they lack talent or opportunity, but because they lack the mental clarity to recognize talent and opportunity when they appear. They'll mistake motion for progress, busyness for productivity, information for knowledge, reaction for response. They'll live their entire lives one level of consciousness below what they're capable of, not because they're not smart enough or strong enough or good enough, but because their minds are too cluttered with noise to access their own intelligence, strength, and goodness. Don't let this be your story. Don't look back from your deathbed and realize you spent your most precious resource, your attention, on things that ultimately didn't matter. Don't discover too late that the life you were capable of living was always available to you, hidden behind the noise you chose to let into your mind. The path to clarity starts with a single decision: to value your own consciousness more than you value fitting in with a world gone mad with distraction, to prioritize your own mental health more than you prioritize appearing responsive to every demand on your attention, to choose the discomfort of silence over the comfortable numbness of noise. This decision will need to be made not once but every day, in small moments and large ones, when the pull of distraction is weak and when it's overwhelming. But each time you choose silence over noise, stillness over reaction, purpose over distraction, you strengthen the mental muscles that make the next choice easier. You build the internal fortress that protects your consciousness from external manipulation. You develop the warrior's mind that can find peace in chaos, clarity in confusion, purpose in the midst of a world that has forgotten what purpose means. You become the quiet force that shapes reality through focused intention, rather than hoping reality will somehow arrange itself around your scattered attention. This is your invitation to step off the conveyor belt of constant stimulation and step into the life you were actually meant to live. The life where your actions align with your values, where your time is spent on what matters, where your mind is clear enough to see the path forward even when everyone around you is lost in the noise. The invitation is always there, but it won't wait forever. Every day you delay, the noise gets louder, the habits get stronger. The path back to clarity gets more difficult, but it's never impossible. The human mind is remarkably resilient, capable of healing from years of distraction, capable of developing focus even after decades of scattered attention, capable of finding stillness even in the middle of external chaos. All it requires is the decision to begin and the discipline to continue. The decision to turn down the volume on everything that doesn't serve your highest purpose, and the discipline to keep it turned down even when the world demands that you turn it back up. The decision to create sacred space in your life for silence, and the discipline to protect that space even when everyone else thinks you're crazy for needing it. The decision to trust that your own wisdom, when given the quiet space to emerge, is more valuable than all the external advice and information and opinion that clamors for your attention every day. The discipline to listen to that inner wisdom, even when it contradicts what everyone else is saying, even when it asks you to do things that are difficult or unpopular or misunderstood. This is the warrior's path in the modern world, not the warrior who fights external enemies with physical weapons, but the warrior who fights internal enemies with mental discipline. The warrior who understands that the greatest battles are fought, not on physical battlefields, but in the landscape of consciousness itself. The warrior who knows that controlling your own mind is the prerequisite for controlling anything else in your life, who understands that freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, but the ability to want what serves your highest purpose, who recognizes that power is not the ability to control others, but the ability to remain uncontrolled by others. In a world drowning in noise, be the island of silence. In a culture addicted to reaction, be the steady presence that responds with wisdom. In a society scattered by distraction, be the focused force that creates something meaningful. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Not because everyone will understand, but because you will understand. And in that understanding, in that clarity that comes from a mind freed from the tyranny of noise, you'll find not just peace but power, not just calm but capability, not just stillness but strength, the strength to build the life you actually want instead of settling for the life that happens by default, the strength to become who you're actually capable of becoming instead of remaining who you've always been. Silence the noise or be consumed by it. The choice is yours, but the choice is now, and the consequences of that choice will ripple through every day of your life from this moment forward. Choose wisely, choose courageously, choose with the future version of yourself in mind. That person is counting on the decision you make today.